Hey, thanks for joining me. So, not too long ago, as of this recording on my channel, I hit the end of the runs of both Wildcats and Cyberforce in terms of their first run, their first volumes, where Jim Lee started Wildcats and Silvestri started Cyberforce. And then, of course, as we all know, they drew those books for a little while, then handed them off to other artists, other writers, to varying degrees of success and interest. And I got to the end of the run. And towards the end of both runs, I kind of lost interest in both titles because the artists, unfortunately, were not anybody I was interested in. But, I did cover the entirety of both volume ones of Wildcats and Cyberforce. And, this, I don't know how else to word this. This is going to sound stupid, but there's a little part of me that just, this little microscopic part of me that's a little sad. It's like, oh, that content is over. That stuff was part of an era of comics in the 90s that young teenage me was just so over the moon excited about. And if you were there, most of you get it. You understand. Just the energy and the excitement and the fun, new characters, new books, new things by our favorite creators. And like I've said, it turns out that, the long-term kind of interest in most of these things, not all of them, but most of them, kind of doesn't hold on. They're not something that you revisit because you're like, what was a great story was the original Wildcats miniseries. Like, do you remember the incredibly awesome things that happened and how that story spiraled to this incredible ending that you just couldn't believe? It was so great. Not a single person says that. Everyone who looks back on these with fondness, myself included, is just kind of like, goddamn, was it fun? They were fun comics, and the art was great. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, there is no problem having an art-driven book that's just kind of silly and just a bunch of stereotypical 90s characters beating the shit out of each other, and just an artist taking the opportunity to draw something big and fun and exciting and having everybody just eat it up. There's nothing wrong with that. And as I got to thinking about it, I'm like, you know what? Back at the beginning, after the miniseries of both Wildcats and Cyberforce, they continued the books, and Jim Lee and Mark Silvestri decided to let's do a 4-part crossover with Wildcats and Cyberforce. And so I kind of get thinking in my head about it because I've already covered these. For anybody who's been following my channel for a long time and you got the memory of it, I have covered these books, but it was 3 years ago. And so again, 3 years ago, I had maybe 400 subscribers. Now I have 8,700. I got more people watching, and it's kind of fun to revisit stuff for hopefully stuff that people haven't seen and just kind of look at it again. But I kind of got thinking in my head after, kind of Cyberforce, Wildcats, I'm done reviewing all the original run of those. But what was my favorite parts? What stuff sticks out? And, there's a lot of different elements to the varying books that were the interesting parts of them. Wildcats, mostly it was the Alan Moore run. There was stuff that was kind of, it was kind of fun to a kid. But this crossover kept coming up in my mind. I'm like, that was fun. It's not brilliant writing or brilliant comics, but it's fun. And as time goes on, I know I review a lot of stuff, and I look at them and I rip them apart, the stories most of the time in these things, and often the art as well. And I'm kind of getting into the concept that, no, these books weren't really worth remembering in a way. But to kind of balance it out, to kind of put it into context, I'm not always saying that. I am kind of just riffing on them and being kind of a, critiquing douchebag just because it's kind of fun. I mean, I am giving my honest opinions. I'm not holding back. But there's nothing wrong with just fun, like brainless superhero comics with big, colorful heroes fighting each other or fighting monsters or bad guys, whether it's like if you're Cyberforce, you're fighting big metallic robotic soldiers or armored enemies. And if you're Wildcats and you're Jim Lee, you're drawing lizard things. And those are the enemies. And you put cool characters and you put hot girls and you put explosions and guns and fights. And I get to thinking about it. I'm like, you know what? There's fucking nothing wrong with that. It's fun. Could it be better? Yes, probably. I guess kind of the downside to these is that these books are written as if they carry the weight and nostalgia of like a long-running X-Men comic with character development and storylines and plot points that we've followed for years. And then therefore, the story beats in these things carry the same weight. And they do not. You can't like ride on the coattails of existing other books and pretend that your characters now have the same thing. It doesn't work that way. And so they're written so seriously and so pretentiously that that's where it kind of falls apart. And I'm kind of like, let's just make it a little bit more lighthearted, a little bit more irreverent, I think would be good. You want to read the best version of something like this? Go read, most of you who follow me are probably already following my pal, Blood Force Mitch. Go look up his channel, Team Blood Force. He's been kicking ass in subscriber counts and views on his videos in the last 2 months. He's been absolutely kicking ass. But he's got his own book that's, to me, the perfect balance of what all this shit is supposed to be like. It's a superhero team that's a very 90s themed concept with all the same kind of metallic armor bits and claws and guns, but it's written with humor and irreverence, and it's one of the funniest and most interesting things I've ever read because it doesn't take itself too seriously, but because it does that, it made it so fun. I remember that stuff because I've had the good fortune to get preview copies of his first 4 books, and I reviewed the first 2 on my channel. Go look at it. Anyway, I'm not doing this to kiss Mitch's ass. I mean, whatever. Hey, Mitch, what's up? Checks in the mail, right, buddy? But just the idea of just a creator sitting down and having your own stupid superhero characters and just have them fight things. I mean, that's fun, and that's what's going on here. It seems like Jim Lee and Silvestri got together, and they're like, let's do a crossover. Let's get our guys with metal blade fingers. Let's get them together, and let's have them be former friends, and then now they're enemies, and let's put a hot redhead that they're probably both fucking, at least at one point, and have her be the one who betrays them, and now the teams get together, and we get to draw our own teams fighting. Goddamn, does that sound like fun? And that's what this whole thing comes across as. So like I said, I reviewed these books 3 years ago. This time we're just going to kind of blast through them because there's no story worth getting into a lot of depth and explanation. Not worth it. These books don't deserve it. But it is just a fun kind of superhero gag of let's just get our characters together and fight. And it was neat seeing like Jim Lee draw Silvestri's characters and vice versa. I've made no bones about the fact that I hate Warblade's outfit, his long green ponytail, these weird nonsensical pipes that flow around his body. But I got to be honest, when you get the right artist on it, even all these bullshit design elements kind of look cool in the hands of the right artist. I really like the metallic shine going on in the metal mask here, the gritted teeth. Of course, Warblade's whole shtick is that he's kind of like a liquid metal guy, kind of like the T-1000, Terminator 2. So he's like liquid metal, but all he does is flex his fingers into big sharp blades, but he can make them really long. And you got Ripclaw from Cyberforce. He's a Native American guy. He's a mutant. I don't know what his mutant powers are, but he's been enhanced cybernetically, specifically given metal bladed finger claws. So they're just kind of like, in basic concept, visual description, kind of the same dude. And then, of course, we introduce hot redhead girl with the tiniest waist and the most perfect fuckable ass you've ever seen on the cover of a comic book. Thank you, Jim Lee and Scott Williams. So now this book, I actually could have and should have busted out issue 5. Because there was a story set up and there was a lot of cool shit that happened in issue 5. Anyway, we'll just keep going. But Warblade was in this installation. This is the Wildcats team in a jet going to get their buddy. And Warblade was in this installation, and he ended up running into hot redhead girl, and they were fighting, and then the installation blew up. This is where the Wildcats Killer Instinct crossover, Chapter 1, that's where this starts. They're worried that Warblade's dead, and they're trying to get away, and Spartan, of course, being the boring, stereotypical Cyclops wannabe leader, flying the jet. He's like, we can't go down there and save Wolverine, Gambit and Psylocke and Colossus and whoever the fuck else, because we got to get away. There's an important, the government that runs this place, they're going to track us down, they're going to send jets after us, and then so Voodoo is pointing out the window. She's like, holy shit, they're on their way. Look, there are enemy jets shooting at us. Now, I remember talking about this scene in the original review, and it's one of the most ridiculous scenes because I would never write the book specifically like this, but you could still have the same kind of concept happen, but there's so many things that happen in these next couple of pages that just bug me from a technical aspect in terms of the characters in universe, which is our Wildcats team is in a jet, and then the bad guys show up and shoot missiles at them, and their jet gets hit by missiles, and their entire vehicle explodes around them, and they all survive and are just falling out. It's kind of like if you watch the old G.I. Joe cartoon when like the Joes shoot weapons at the Cobras in a jet, and instantly the pilots just pop out and they're parachuting to the ground because no one can die. Now, if you know anything about fighter planes and jets and shit like that, if you're in a vehicle that gets hit by multiple missiles and it explodes around you, you all die. It's just, you all die. Spartan saying, shields are depleted. Everyone to the escape pods before it's too late, and then the jet explodes. Now, Spartan says, I'm going to try and protect us with a plasma shield, I'm guessing from falling debris. But even as a kid, the exploding jet and everyone just living bugged the shit out of me. I got to say, I really like the art in this panel because there's a lot of heavy shadows, and I'm a big advocate that Jim Lee doing big, heavy shadows is the best version of his art. I actually really like the panel, the art. But yeah, jet explodes. Now they're falling. And so now as they fall through the sky, they're having long conversations. Again, there are a million examples of comic books where characters are falling through the sky or jumping through the air and having long conversations that they couldn't possibly have in the fractions of seconds where they're falling through the sky or jumping. But these are comics. This is an entirely different kind of art format and art form. And so I shouldn't overthink it, but it did kind of bug me. But them talking as they fall wasn't amongst the biggest things that bugged me. But the exploding jet was one, but they're falling. They're like, hey, watch out. Spartan saves Voodoo, but like more enemy jets are coming. So Grifter's yelling, Spartan behind you. So Spartan balls up his fist, shoots the jet, blows it up. Maul is falling. He grabs onto Void, who I think passed out. And then Maul does his mass shifting thing, grows huge, smashes a jet. That's all kind of fine. This is a superhero team. At least they're not jumping out of a jet, right? That's a 90s comic book team trope of a team in a jet and they jump out to go fight the bad guys. Well, in this version, their jet got shot down and they're falling to their deaths. course, they're not going to die. And then this scene where Grifter and Zealot, they're falling, and they're just angling themselves to, as you fall through the sky to get from one position in space to another position in space. Space being just the area that you're in, not outer space, but just in the combat zone that they're in, to be falling through the sky and position themselves to fall and jump onto one of the jets flying by, going at 300 miles an hour probably, while they're having a conversation about the movie Point Break, how Patrick Swayze and Keanu Reeves were jumping and falling and parachuting. They're making a joke about that. They grab onto the jet, and Grifter doesn't need both hands to hold onto the fucking jet. In fact, he doesn't need even two hands because he's got a gun in one hand, and with his other hand, he pulls out a cigarette and lights it while they're on a jet with the wind blasting in their face. So they're talking, they're lighting up smokes, not holding on to anything. And again, kid me read this, I'm going, this is so fucking stupid. This can't happen. Now, again, I know it's comic books, right? This, don't take it so seriously. But I kind of like it when it's taken a little bit more seriously. I feel like this would read more interesting if they're like screaming for their lives, barely holding on the verge of panic, and busting into the ship and then shooting the bad guys. Once they're inside the jet, then Grifter should light up a smoke, and then they should talk and go, holy shit, that was close. We almost died. That's how I would approach it. But who the fuck am I? I'm complaining about Jim Lee here. So, don't listen to me. They get inside the jet. Bad guys point their guns. Grifter shoots all their brains out. And they're like, well, you shot the pilots. I hope you know how to fly this jet. And Grifter's like, actually, I don't. But how hard could it be? So the jet just augers in, hits the snow, slams into the ground, and somehow holds together. They get out of the jet. They look up, and here comes Maul. I mean, this jet was flying through the air, and Maul was falling straight to the ground, and somehow the jet beat Maul to the ground, even though the jet was flying. Whatever, these are comic books. Falls to the ground, slams into the snow. They're like, holy shit, that's crazy. Could have killed us all. And then Maul bursts up out of the snow, and he's still big, and if you know Maul's powers, the bigger he gets, the dumber he gets. He loses control of his brains. I did forget to mention, we know the creative teams. Brandon Choi with Jim Lee on story, barf. We've got Jim Lee pencils and Scott Williams on inks, but you have ink assists by J.D., John Ty, and Rich Johnson. So, maybe that was like a bunch of background assists. Maybe, Scott Williams gets to do all the cool shit up front, and then the other guys get to draw like the snow and the little wavy explosion shapes. Maybe. I don't know. But yeah, Maul, he landed, he survived, Void's okay, and then Spartan lands holding Voodoo, and they're like, holy shit, goddamn, did we just barely make it? That was scary. So now they're like, all right, look, we got Maul's too big, and we can't get him to reduce his size because his brain is shut off, but Voodoo can. It's kind of like in the Marvel movies where Black Widow would go up to Hulk and like tickle his balls and make him shrink back down to a regular sized human. That's what Voodoo can do. So she gets on her hand and she starts praying to a white Jesus. Please, white Jesus, save us from this giant purple stupid muscle monster. And he shrinks back down. I kind of dig that shot of Maul there. I never liked this character and his big giant tusks on his back, but boom, he's fixed. But then Voodoo, I don't know, maybe she fakes passing out so she can point her titties straight in the air right at Spartan, because these two are like almost pretend fucking. Maybe they actually are. Spartan's just a giant walking vibrator. But Voodoo, she got her ass knocked out because of all the strain of being in a jet that exploded, falling through the sky, almost dying, and then using her powers to fix a giant purple monster. So Void's going to transport Voodoo out of there to get her out of the scene. I don't know, maybe Jim Lee just didn't want these two idiots in the comic, because if you put Void and Voodoo up against any of the Cyberforce characters, they'll get their fucking asses kicked. You got to have the actual warriors fight Cyberforce. So they take off. So now we're left Maul, Grifter, Zealot, Spartan. They're looking around. They put on some jetpacks. They fly off to this facility where Warblade was. They get there, and then there's Hot Redhead Girl. Now, again, we were introduced to her in the previous issue. Her name's Misery. She has mental control abilities, manipulation abilities. In a comic that's just kind of like an X-Men ripoff thing, It's weird to have a bunch of superheroes and a hot redhead that can control your mind, Jean Grey. But she says some evil shit, so I do kind of like this shot of them all shooting at her. But she throws up a protective force field while a teleportation portal opens up and takes her out of there because there's Warblade on the ground. They teleport away. So Warblade's been kidnapped by mysterious redheaded evil bitch. Great. So now we gotta, oh fuck, the book over. So then in one of the dumbest those pages, especially with Spartan, he's standing there just pointing his fist at us. It's just kind of weird. Like, I kind of like Grifter. He takes his mask up all over his head, so now it's like a bandana, puts on some sunglasses, lights up a smoke, has a beer in his hand. He's just so cool. Zealot's just standing here like half naked, looking hot, and Maul's being stupid. Why does Spartan have like a camel toe man pussy in this drawing? Like, I understand it's supposed to be a seam coming down from his little white pants, but that looks really weird. I don't want to see Spartan's little robotic man pussy. Don't need to see it. Anyway, they're like, well, now we got to investigate. Who was Redhead Girl and where'd they take Warblade? I do like this kind of silhouette shot of the characters, just a little bit of their costume details showing. I think that actually looks good. And then Spartan gives the most bullshit, almost like Star Trek-like techno-babble bullshit reason to be able to look into the past to see what happens. He says his thermal imager can assimilate even the slightest residual heat patterns in the area by processing this through my brain, blah, 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 enabling me, in essence, to look back in time. So it's like his computer brain can pick up residual heat patterns of where people were and reconstruct the scene. It's such bullshit, but it's a comic book, so who cares? Warblade was fighting Misery. Again, that happened in the previous issue. They're locked down after the explosion. Redhead Girl is kind of sad over this guy who was there, and it looks like he's dead, but then she kind of snaps back into evil mode and drags Warblade off, goes up to a computer panel to type in something, and that's when they showed up. So now Spartan and Grifter are like, well, what was she doing? They start putting some, inputs into a computer, and out pops a golden photon torpedo from Star Trek. I do like this shiny metallic look of the photon torpedo and the reflection on the shiny surface. It's really neat, but there's supposed to be something interesting in here. But as they dig on it, it zaps them, electrocutes them. They're like, well, what do we do now? So Spartan contacts stupid Jacob Marlowe, who's back at the Halo building in New York. Void and Voodoo are getting looked at. And there's an exposition dump. They take a big, hot, steaming exposition dump straight on our chests, and we don't want it because these books are kind of boring. But they're like, hey, this terrible stuff happened back in the day. Anyway, let's continue on with the story. Warblade. There's like this backstory where Marlowe 2 years ago, ran into Warblade talking about Misery, and that's how he brought him into the team or something like that. Who cares? Back with Warblade. Now this is modern day. When Redhead Girl ran off with them, she's sitting up there. He wakes up. He's strapped to a big old stone slab, and Warblade's pissed off because he's pissed off at her because she betrayed them years ago. And she's like, oh, you stupid liquid metal fucker. You don't know what you're talking about. So Warblade frees himself. He dives at her, but then you hear a voice say, not this time, butcher. I do kind of like this close-up shot of Warblade's eyes. Jim Lee likes to do that shot, and he does it well. Who's there? Oh, shit, it's Ripclaw. He just showed up from nowhere. As a double-page spread, this is not my favorite that Jim Lee's ever done. The Ripclaw drawing is big and in your face, but I don't love it. I do actually kind of like the Warblade shot, especially the face all in shadow and the eyes and the teeth kind of showing the pose. That looks kind of cool. But we're just setting up. Warblade, Ripclaw, they know each other. They hate each other because, of course, they do. And we're going to have to fight because Ripclaw is saying Warblade must die. Okay, well, off we go to the next issue. So that was Wildcats number 6, Killer Instinct chapter 1. So now, on to Cyberforce, issue 2 of the regular series, Killer Instinct part 2. Now we get into the Silvestri art. Now, at the time, I was a bigger fan of Jim Lee, and I hadn't quite come to realize, I knew Mark Silvestri was good, but I kind of thought he was second fiddle to Jim Lee, and boy, has that opinion for me changed dramatically. Silvestri's the best out of them all. So I'm a little bit more excited to read this one. So now we're starting years ago. We got some jets flying towards an island. So this is in the past. And here we got, there's Ripclaw, there's Warblade, there's Killjoy, bunch of generic soldiers. And then there's that redheaded misery bitch. So they were on a team together years ago. They're going to do some kind of mission. I like this shot of the jets kind of flying in low on the surf in between some like a couple of cliffs. That's a really good shot. Weird looking vehicles, but Silvestri does good weird looking vehicles. And we get, you know what? Here we go. This is like standard 90s image era stuff. A team jumping out of a jet to go into battle. Like I was saying in the last issue, the team got shot out of a jet and they were just trying to survive landing. But this time, it's a team jumping out to go do some kind of awesome mission in theory. Looks like Warblade has a jetpack. It doesn't, I can't really tell if Ripclaw does. Everyone else does. And anytime I see a Mark Silvestri hot girl, God, does he just draw the hottest girls? Even if the proportions are like hyper perfect comic book bodies with giant tits and little ass and big hips and long hair and big DSLs. If you know, you know. I do like this kind of pose on Killjoy down there. But whoever these guys are, I mean, we know Ripclaw and Warblade. They're on a special team. They're a special unit for cyber data. They're going to investigate something years ago. They land, they stand. You know, I really wish all these goddamn words weren't covering up the figures. I get you got to put them somewhere, but I bet you the dialogue could be rewritten where we don't need all these fucking words, because I guarantee you the story's not that great. I'm pretty sure I mentioned in my original review 3 years ago, I always liked that pose of misery right there. Just kind of her looking off to the side. It's not heavily detailed and rendered with line work because it doesn't need to be, because it's kind of a smaller drawing, but the basic body proportions of, like, again, that perfect female superhero comic book body, just like the guys have. It looks so good. But they land, they look. Misery's flirting with Ripclaw. Warblade doesn't think it's a good idea. Even Warblade's telling Misery, she's like, why are you fucking with him? Why are you being such a redheaded bitch? I'm just exaggerating, guys. Calm down. But they're searching. They push a little button and a secret opening pops open under the ground. So whatever they're looking for, they're going to go find it. Ripclaw is heading down there first. And then we get to the underground, giant double page spread of giant robotic armored faceless minions, which again, this is what Silvestri likes. Jim Lee likes lizard monsters. Silvestri likes giant robotic soldier monsters. So you got Ripclaw, you got Killjoy, and they're like, well, I guess we got to fight. Hell yeah. Let's get to fighting. So we start slicing shit off, just cutting them up. Killjoy using her gun blast to just shoot, because one of her abilities is that she's super fast. We cut to this bad guy. His name is Richtofen. I guess he's supposed to be some villain that we're scared of. He was in issue 5 of Wildcats. We're introducing him here in the Cyberforce book. Again, some new character who's supposed to be the face of evil. A lot of talking. Pretty good art, of course. You know, I like all these shots of the guy. Explosion in the background. What is it? It's Ripclaw and Killjoy. They just killed all their soldiers. Now we're showing up. Again, this is just a couple of artists. Jim Lee and Silvestri, just like, we want to just draw the fun shit. And, you know, again, I bet you about Liefeld doing this type of shit, but there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. And every time Liefeld does it, it's the wrong way, where you just want to draw the cool shit. Like your characters fighting villains, you know, awesome heroes, hot girls, monsters, bad guys, fights, explosions. It's just as brainless, but this is at least visually 1,000 times better than anything Liefeld does, for example. It's brainless, but it's fun, and it's well done. So they're showing up there. Warblade shows up, because, of course, we got to have a big shot of him jumping into battle. Let's start attacking each other, slicing up generic bad guys again. Love that shot there. Love this big screamy shot there with the bladed fingers coming up front. Warblade goes up to this Richtofen guy and chops his eye out, like literally slices his eye out of his face, because the guy did have an eye patch when he was introduced. And of course, this version of him, the younger version of him from a couple years ago, he's got both his eyes, but now he doesn't. You see how he loses it. So, but then the soldiers that come down with Warblade and Ripclaw and Misery and Killjoy, like there was also a bunch of generic soldiers. Here they are, but Misery shoots our own soldiers in the back. This is what she did to betray us. For some reason, I guess she's on the side of that Richtofen dude. Warblade's got a big screamy face, calls her a traitorous witch. So just at that moment, Ripclaw comes up out of the ground only to see Warblade coming at Misery and stabbing her right in the tits. Just stabs her, bam. And of course, Ripclaw was fucking her, so now he's pissed off. He's like, how dare you fuck my sweet ass. Wait, that sounded wrong. The sweet ass I was fucking. There we go. Goes running up to her, and he's like, what the hell? Because Misery's dying words are like, Ripclaw, be careful. Warblade is a double agent. He's trying to kill me. And Warblade's like, dude, she's lying. Don't listen to her. So now, of course, this is how we're setting up the confrontation between the two characters from the two teams with the metal-bladed fingers. Now they hate each other because apparently Warblade killed the girlfriend of Ripclaw. They're jumping at each other. They're bloody. They're screaming at each other. Everything's going to hell. They're at the top of a massive cliff. Warblade's got his back to it. And I guess Warblade just stands there and lets Ripclaw stab him through the guts with a single claw. And so Warblade falls off the cliff to his apparent theoretical death. Now we cut back to the scene where we ended on the previous book, where we ended where Ripclaw showed up. This shot right here. This is Jim Lee's version. This is Silvestri's version. I think Silvestri's looks way better, but I could probably say that about anything Silvestri does compared to Jim Lee. I really like the pose on Ripclaw. That's fun. And of course, Misery, she's up there and she's just like, haha, these stupid men are going to fight over me because they're stupid men. So now they dive at each other again to fight. I never have liked the visual kind of language that they would use for Warblade, where he stretches, because again, he's like liquid metal, so he can flex. But all it does is looks like he's like Mr. Fantastic, like he's made of rubber. And I don't know what the best way to visually illustrate the liquid metal flexing ability would be, but I don't think that it ever worked when they did it like this, because it just makes him look like he's, you know, flexible, like Reed Richards, but he's not. He's liquid metal. So I don't like it. But they dive at each other. And now, once again, they have to fight. They dive out of the way of each other. They slash each other in the back. So there's, again, Silvestri showing Warblade having the flexible, kind of long, elongated arms and stuff. Not a fan. It kind of doesn't work. And of course, Misery's just loving it. She's like, haha, what a bunch of idiots. They're fighting over me. Ripclaw slashes Warblade across the face. Now there's blood. Now this is something I don't understand about Warblade's powers. He's supposed to be liquid metal, essentially. So how does his ability to flex and stretch affect him being like a living being who can get cut and bleed? Like if he's like the T-1000, remember his defining characteristic trait was that he basically couldn't be injured. You could shoot him, blow him up, squish him, crush him, and he just forms back into a shape and keeps coming. And that's a more interesting idea for Warblade, but he can bleed, I guess. All right, Ripclaw cuts him across the face. Warblade stabs Ripclaw in the lower thigh for some reason. They slash, they fight. They're back again at the top of a fucking cliff like they were years ago. Here they are again. They slash at each other repeatedly, slash. Warblade grabs Ripclaw and like grabs him and pulls him back and does a kick flip, sending Ripclaw flying over him and lands on a spiky, there's like a metal gate or a metal fence with spikes sticking up, and it stabs Ripclaw right through the lower guts. Again, not enough to kill him. He's going to live through that. But just before Warblade tackles Ripclaw's down for a minute. Warblade gets shot by a laser blast. That's a really good shot. I actually really dig that. And then, of course, the most boring character on Cyberforce shows up. There's Heatwave. He shows up, shoots Warblade, who then falls off a cliff into the water like he did on the previous pages. They're like, holy shit, Ripclaw, are you okay? And then Misery's like, oh my God, this is so crazy. Heatwave showed up right on time. Punctuality. I like that in a man. Back with the regular Cyberforce team. There they are on their jet. And, well, because Heatwave showed up, they gathered up Ripclaw and Misery, and they're flying off to go find, you know, the next chapter of the story. So they're all chit-chatting back and forth. Misery's lying to everybody, And as they're flying along, they zoom down on the ground and see there are the Wildcats team. And I really like this drawing. It's fun seeing the Wildcats drawn by Silvestri. That was part of the appeal that I was really into. So the two teams are heading on a crash course to fight each other. We've already seen Ripclaw and Warblade a couple of times, but getting the teams together to fight, that's what we're at. And again, we saw this setup happen in this previous issue where the characters were in the snow hanging out. You know, these guys are left, and they're investigating what happened with Warblade, but now Cyberforce is on the scene. Now we have to get them together, and we're going to fight. Very exciting. I always love this shot, getting to see it in kind of the black and white. So that was part 2. On to part 3. Wildcats issue 7, Killer Instinct, chapter 3. We got stupid, boring Spartan fighting stupid, boring, 3-armed Cable. Off we go. Again, Jim Lee pencil, Scott Williams inks, with ink assist from JD, John Ty, Rich Johnson. As much as I was excited to see Silvestri draw the Wildcats, I was excited to see Jim Lee draw the Cyberforce crew. I gotta say, I wasn't as thrilled with Jim Lee's version of the Cyberforce characters. He does his Jim Lee thing, but it's not as interesting as Silvestri. So here we got like the most 90s character you've ever seen. He's got short cropped bullshit hair and then a long ponytail. Like, this is shit I get pissy with Liefeld over. When he draws his characters with a ponytail and they have their hair up top be very short, but then there's this long rat tail that's like 3 feet long hanging out the back of their head. It looks so ridiculous. It looked ridiculous in the 90s. This is 1994. Like, I was still in 11th grade in high school. But there's a lot of text, a lot of words, a lot of dialogue, a lot of text boxes. Don't need any of it. But there's Stryker. He's got 3 arms. So now they get to jump out of a jet and fall through the sky to go fight the Wildcats crew. Now, this is Jim Lee. There's something about his art that doesn't look quite the same Jim Lee that I had seen before. Something is different. It's a little rounder. It's a little bit less interesting. I'm not into the face shot here. Like, for a giant double-page spread of Cyberforce jumping out of their own fucking jet to go fight somebody, it's not as exciting. It's not as good. It's kind of disappointing in a way to me. But all right, here comes the Cyberforce crew. Let's get down there. Back up on the jet, Cyblade is talking to Misery. You know, Misery's probably manipulating everybody. Cyberforce crew lands down on the snow, and we know that the Wildcats are down here somewhere. Meanwhile, back with the island, I guess the one that exploded in the first issue, there's just some rando douchebags down here that are just, they've got guns and hot girls, and I think they're supposed to be like smugglers of some type. But Warblade, remember he got knocked off a cliff in the last issue, like for the second time, into the water? Well, this is him pulling his ass out of the water. He smacks them and knocks them into the water, steals their little, whatever, hydroplaning boat thing so he can get back to the story. Okay, let's do it. So now the Cyberforce crew, they're all out searching, they're looking around, and Stryker, with his little robotic eye, he's able to detect that there's something going on. There's someone that's been around very near. Spartan, I guess he's lying in the snow, I guess, and he's got himself kind of camouflaged, cloaked. But he jumps up, he's like, God damn, you could actually detect me. You guys are pretty badass, whoever you are. So Spartan shoots Stryker. And I've made this point before where it's like, so many of these characters in all these books get shot with laser blasts, and it's just kind of like they got hit by a garbage can. Not like a car. A car would kill you, but if you get somebody to throw a garbage can at you, it'll knock you down and hurt you, but you get back up and you keep going. This laser blast just hits Stryker. Now, maybe Spartan wasn't shooting to kill. You could make that argument, and that's fine, but it happens all the time. These characters get shot with laser blasts, and it never actually hurts them. Spartan, big awesome shot of him charging forward, socks Stryker right in the face, bam, knocks him down. Now Velocity, the speedster of Cyberforce, she comes running up. So Spartan turns around and is kind of a badass. It's like he's casting a little magical spiderweb spell. This pose, he's like, I cast spiderweb. wraps her up because he's a cyborg, or he's not a cyborg, he's just a robot. So he's got all kinds of abilities, which include, and not limited to, getting shot up and punched full of holes and parts of him ripped off all the time because he's a robot. So the idea is that he can get ripped apart and just get rebuilt. But it essentially makes him seem kind of weak and fragile. But at least he's kind of being a badass. He took out Stryker, although it was a sucker punch. He wraps up Velocity and sends her flying into a pile of snow and debris. Stryker gets back up with a gun to his head. But I guess Spartan's so fast, he just dives at Stryker, gets him in a chokehold. Stryker's got his 3 arms shooting blast through Spartan's guts. Maul shows up. He reveals himself. He was under a bunch of debris. And of course, we're going to have strong guy fight strong guy. And so Impact from Cyberforce, he's like, all right, you're a big dude. Bam, slugs him right in the face, sends him flying. Great. And then while Maul is hitting the ground, Impact picks up a bunch of debris and slams it on him, just crushes him. Now I'm like, that could kill a dude. Are they trying to kill each other? Of course, these are comic books. No one gets hurt. Maul gets pissed off and he just grows bigger, and Impact's like, oh God, now I'm in for it. Cut back to poor story points that we don't give a shit about. There's Jacob Marlowe. You know, he's stressed. He's got his hand with his fingers up on his temple and his cigar because he's stressed about his poor team out there doing God knows what. And his little secretary sex slave, Jules, shows up. And they're like, hey, don't worry, everything's going to be fine. So now we cut back to Void and Voodoo. Remember how they were in the book and they teleported them away? So, of course, Voodoo, she's got her hair done. She's in a slinky kind of sheer see-through little sex outfit with their nipples pointing out. And Void's coming out saying that they should fucking tongue punch each other's fart boxes. Why not? Because no one's there and we're consenting adults. Let's do that shit. Cut back to Stormwatch. Hey, everyone knows Stormwatch? The weatherman's up there watching the fight between the Wildcats and the Cyberforce crew. And so we, it makes sense to have what is the term? I'm like, the team where all the nations are together, the team for the organization where all the nations work together, whatever, the United Nations or whatever the fuck. They're supposed to watch the Earth, and they're seeing this big battle happen, and so they're kind of having, hey, there's Cannon and whoever. They're like, hey, we should go down there and stop these two teams from fighting. They could start some shit. And the weatherman's like, no. We're not going to do that. So, well, there's a waste of time. I mean, it makes sense to show that Stormwatch is watching, because they should. That's their job. We got a pinup by Travis Charest. I don't know who this girl is cosplaying as Spartan with those big, luscious lips. It's kind of a fun drawing. Great lighting, great inking. But I don't know. He sure looks kissable. But there's Spartan in a pinup. Anyway, back to the story. Maul is beating the shit out of Impact. Grifter's sneaking around, and he gets shot by Heatwave. Again, blasted with double laser blast hits, and Grifter's just holding his face, but it doesn't really do anything. It doesn't hurt him. Like, why are these people getting shot? Because these are comic books. This is like who cares, right? But they get shot. It would vaporize them and kill them, but no, it doesn't. Grifter kind of tucks and rolls with the damage. Heatwave flies down, and he's like actually shocked, because part of the story that's going on is that Misery is mentally controlling Cyberforce. She was up in the jet with them, and even Heatwave is like, good Lord, he's broken his neck. What have I done? I'm being too violent. I'm going too far. So the Cyberforce crew is kind of not in their own kind of right minds, which is a good way to have them, a reason for them to be fighting each other. But I guess Grifter could have a broken neck because the sound effect shows him flipping his head back around, and so he's not dead. Heatwave's kind of surprised as Grifter pulls out his double guns and shoots Heatwave point blank range, but misses, I guess. Or maybe because Heatwave has armor on, maybe the bullets don't actually hurt him. Who knows? Who's to say, right? Zealot is tracking down Ripclaw and Misery, and while she's doing that, she fails to notice Psyblade coming up behind Zealot, and she pulls out her Psylocke focused totality of her telepathic powers, little laser knife on her wrist. She's going to stab Zealot in the coochie for all I know. But Zealot's a badass, so she throws an elbow to her guts and a backhand fist to Cyblade's face. And then she stands over her menacingly while Cyblade is on the ground. Of course, Zealot saying like, you know, your minds are clouded and you're a badass, but I'm not going to kill you because we're not your enemy because you're being controlled. So Zealot kicks Cyblade in the face, knocks her down. Ripclaw finally gets back on the job and slashes Zealot right in the tits, it looks like. Zealot stabs Ripclaw through the arm, which pisses Ripclaw off even more. So he rips out her guts again. It's a pretty good shot. So Zealot's sitting there holding herself together. Again, if Ripclaw ripped her guts out that bad, how is she still alive? Because these are comic books and they're not supposed to have any kind of brain power in them, right? It's showing that Zealot is in a bad way, but that would have killed her. Now, maybe her armor, the little bit of armor that she's got on her like rib cage and her lower part of her titties, maybe that protected her from the blades. I don't know. Anyway, Ripclaw goes with Misery, and they go back into the same facility, and they come back to that golden photon torpedo. So this is obviously, like, this is a big deal. This is a major plot point. What the hell is in the golden photon torpedo? They push some buttons. She looks at it and she's like, oh, this is great. This is what we've always wanted. So Ripclaw starts filling up Misery's titties as she looks inside the photon torpedo. But through a crack in the wall, there's an evil face. And then a hand comes busting through. Who is it? Oh, shit. Big side shot of Warblade. He's all ripped up because, remember, he got knocked off the cliff. Then he had to steal a boat from some people and drive it back and then probably swim through the water and climb the mountain and claw through the building to get to this point, to look tough and be like, I'm going to kick the shit out of both of you. That's a pretty good shot, I got to be honest. So, again, what is the story? Redhead is controlling our heroes, and they're looking for whatever is in the golden photon torpedo, and the teams are just fighting because fighting is what we do. Here is part 4. Silvestri art, we're into it, right? It's Scott Williams on inks with ink assist from J.D. John Ty, Rich Johnson. So, God, Scott Williams was inking all 4 of these books. Again, lots of assists, probably background assists. So now we got the leaders of the respective teams, boring characters all around, Heatwave and Spartan. They're essentially the same guy. They're a heroic guy with like a mask on with their hair hanging out the top. Like there's not a skull cap, so their hair hangs out. They fly, they have metallic armor bits, and they shoot lasers from their hands, and they bark orders at the team. They're the same fucking character, except Heatwave is boring and Spartan is a robot. And boring. So, again, big shot of the crew. They're fighting. There's Heatwave and Spartan fighting in the background. Grifter's shooting at Stryker. Maul and Impact are looking at each other. Velocity's just looking around. Zealot's over there. I guess she's fine. Remember how Ripclaw ripped her guts out? I guess she's just okay. Cyblade, I guess she picked her ass up. She got knocked out by Zealot, but I guess they're fine. I keep wanting to say Spartan. Stryker is shooting. Maul is stomping. Maul gets shot by, I guess, Cyblade. Heatwave, he's just gritting his teeth. It's just action shot after action shot. Now here's another double-page spread of Warblade and Ripclaw and Hot Girl. Man, does Silvestri draw a hot girl with all the right bulbous, big, round, hot, sexy shapes and the big, poofy hair. I'm a fan. I love it. Warblade is pissed off. He's going to start murdering the shit out of people again. I like that close-up of Ripclaw's eyes. I do really like this shot of Warblade charging forward. Lots of heavy shadow. You know, again, these are brainless comics, but they look like it's fun. It seems like Silvestri and Jim Lee were having a lot of fun with this stuff. Back with, like, version 2 of the fight between Zealot and Cyblade. But they are acknowledging that Zealot is in a bad way because she is holding her guts in. So she's not at full strength, which gives Cyblade... I mean, Cyblade's a tough girl, but she's nowhere on the level of Zealot. Zealot's like several centuries old from a culture that worships war. So she's the ultimate warrior, and Cyblade is just a hot girl who just learned how to be a fighter just a couple of years ago. So there's no contest here. Zealot is going to slaughter the shit out of Cyblade, but Zealot had her guts ripped out. She gets her sword knocked out of her hand. Cyblade kicks her in the face, punches her in the face, and then mounts her and just starts beating her face in, just starts pummeling her. They should just solve this with just a bunch of making out. Come on, girls. You're both pretty. Let's kiss and make up, and let's just see where the night takes us. But they're beating the shit out of each other, and then Cyblade grabs Zealot's sword and tells Velocity, he's like, come over, kid. You want to be an adult? Take this sword and stab the shit out of this bitch that I'm beating the shit out of. Just get her. All right, we got to cut back to Ripclaw and Warblade. They're just cutting the shit out of each other, and, it means nothing because there's no permanent damage ever. They're just slicing at each other. Here's that flexing Reed Richards thing going on. Warblade, if you're trying to defeat Ripclaw and you can actually connect with his face, why don't you stab him in the face? Why are you balling up your fist and punching him? Unless he's trying to let him live. I mean, they're heroes. They're trying to do that. Ripclaw comes jumping down from up high. So Warblade does his little T-1000 kind of, reshape his body into anything that he wants into this hook thing to grab Ripclaw around the throat and pin him up against a wall. Misery's like, all right, this shit is not going well. Warblade's not under my control. Ripclaw is, but Warblade's not. She's like, what am I going to do? How am I going to solve this? And so part of the story point going on here is that she occasionally kind of comes back to her normal self, like something's controlling her. And she actually thinks like a regular human that doesn't want to be doing this evil shit. But then it clicks back in, the programming, because you see when she has an eye, that's her. When there's an iris, but when it's a blank eye, that's when the programming kicks back in. And so she rage something at both of them. I don't know. Does she have telekinetic powers in addition to telepathic powers? Is she just Jean Grey? Except this time she's fighting over two Wolverines trying to fuck her. I do dig this center shot of the girl. Goddamn, does Silvestri draw the best hips and thighs on girls? Sexy shit. So she knocks them down somehow. So they're on the ground, both holding their heads, wondering what the hell they're doing at the hot redhead. I get it. Back to Heatwave and Spartan. They're in the sky. They're blasting energy. Big gritted teeth shot of Heatwave. He balls up his fist. Heatwave balls up his fist, puts it to the guts of Spartan, and blows a hole through him. Remember, Spartan's interesting because you can blow him to pieces, and it never actually affects anything because you just build another one, which actually makes him weak. Grifter's over here pinned down by Stryker, and we cut back to the scene with Cyblade, Zealot, and Velocity. And I do really kind of like this shot of Velocity. Again, the girl is supposed to be 16 or 17, but why Silvestri goes out of his way to give her the biggest, roundest, most perky underage tits. It's kind of disturbing when you have these underage characters and you sexualize them like this. Can you just say she's 19 years old, please? And it makes it less creepy. We'll just pretend that she's not an underage character and that Silvestri's hypersexualizing her, because that is good art. That is a hell of a body. I really like that shot of Cyblade. That looks good. But Zealot, she's down, she's out. And again, because the crew is under the mental control of Misery, as they kind of address it here. But for some reason, the mental control breaks on Heatwave. He's like, wait, holy shit, what? I feel like I just woke up. And he looks down and he sees a psychotic Velocity raising the sword in the air to give a killing shot. I love that creepy shot. It almost looks like Joker or Harley Quinn kind of thing. It really sells the idea that she's out of her mind and she's about to do something horrible. Great shot. Heatwave blasts his lasers, shoots the sword out of her hand, which somehow frees up the mental control from both Velocity and Cyblade, saving Zealot's life. They're like, holy shit, what is going on? What is controlling us? They don't understand it because Misery is losing her control. Warblade is finally getting his shit together. He turns and looks at her. They exchange some dialogue that's not interesting, and he sends his stabby hand out. Remember how I was saying on the other page here when he punched Ripclaw in the face? He should have stabbed him. Well, he does it here, and he stabs her right through the guts. And I really like this heavily shadowed figure with just a little bit of highlight on the figure in the upper part there. Screamy face, and as she screams, her mental control breaks on everybody. Everyone's grabbing their head. It knocks them to the ground. Maul falls over on top of Impact. Now that she can't control everybody, everyone's got their brains back in the right place. And so Ripclaw and Warblade are like, holy shit. There was something about Misery being pregnant. I guess Ripclaw knocked her up, or somebody knocked someone up. Was it true about the baby? Yeah. And Ripclaw's like, I didn't know. And Warblade's like, she didn't want you to know. So while they're having a heart-to-heart about the fact that the hot redhead was knocked up, they turn and look, and you see, God damn it, got to flip the book over again, that this Misery character is some kind of robot. She's not a flesh and blood being. I don't know how this plays into the original character. I honestly don't remember because it's not interesting. But she's a robot, apparently. And this is even shocking to her. It's like she's now back to her normal self, except she's a robot. She's like, I'm so sad for everything I did. So now Ripclaw gets her, and she's going to die in his arms. And so we come back to the theoretical MacGuffin of the story, the Golden Photon Torpedo. What the fuck is so interesting about this thing that we introduced in the first part, 3 issues ago? What is it? So Warblade goes over to the torpedo, looks inside. What is it? What could it possibly be? It's Spartan's arm. Yes, you heard that right. It is Spartan's arm. He got it ripped off back in one of the early issues of Wildcats by one of the villains. I think Akoda ripped his arm off. And then they're just like, you know what? This is some hyper-advanced technology. So somebody stole it and was going to reverse engineer the technology of this arm. This is what the whole thing was hinging on. Now, it is kind of vaguely interesting to have a scene, a throwaway scene, in an earlier issue where somebody ripped off a robot's arm and just left it lying on the ground somewhere. And somebody picked it up and said, this is valuable technology. We should take it, reverse engineer it, and create an army of soldiers out of this thing. But it's also kind of stupid. So now everyone's like, all right, battle's over. Maul's like, hey, they almost killed us. We can't just let this go. And Grifter's like, dude, come on. We were all under mental manipulation. It's not their fault. It's not our fault. We just need to sit down and shut the fuck up. So now we get the obligatory shot of both teams standing together, shaking hands. Some people are pissed at each other. I do kind of like the shot of Maul and Impact. They're like staring at each other. They're like still mad. These two guys still want to fight. Warblade, Ripclaw shaking hands. Velocity's over here. Looks like she's trying to be cutesy flirty with Grifter. And Cyblade is patching up Zealot. They're talking about how they should get together and do that. Like, let's just make up by just making out. And just see where the night takes us. Silvestri draws that shit. Oh, man, you got the highest selling comic book of all time. These two just naked and making out. Sold. But Cyberforce picks their happy asses up, jumps in the jet, flies away, leaves the Wildcats on the ground, fight's over, mistaken identity, we fought. Now we cut to, oh yeah, do you remember Cyberforce had the character Ballistic, like Girl Cable, robotic eye, robotic arm? She was introduced in the miniseries. We kind of forgot that she even existed. But now we're going like, hey, we're going to continue some storylines, starting with Ballistic, and she becomes a major focus of the crew and joins the team. But we kind of forgot that she existed. So there's your cliffhanger to lead you into the next bit of story. God, Silvestri draws the most ridiculous, awesome guns. Like, look at this. It's like a handheld single, like, handgun with multiple scopes. And let me bring it up close. Like, I guess it shoots lasers, I guess. There's a giant stabby, like, weapon on it. It's even got a fucking vibrator attached to the tip of it. Look at that. This gun does everything. It can cut your steak. It can shoot your villains. It can punch you in your vagina and make you have a happy day. This gun does everything. And anyway, the Killer Instinct crossover is over. Again, I fully acknowledge some of you. I already kind of know what the comments are going to say. Some people are going to be like, yeah, it was fun. It was a good time. And some other people are going to be like, Image Comics was the death of the industry because of the stupid, boring, brainless shit that they produced. And both things are kind of true. I gotta say, this was just fun. It's like I said, I went through the whole beginning of the video talking about how these are just characters where they just get together and we're gonna fight and have like manufactured drama with Redhead Girl and pretentious reasons to get the characters together and fighting. We have all these reasons and all these ridiculous situations, but it was fun. Like, Silvestri's like, hey, let me get my Cyberforce crew and fight your Wildcats crew, Jim Lee. And I bet Jim Lee's like, dude, that sounds like a great idea. The kids will love it. The sales will be great. And we'll have endless amounts of pages of fun shit to draw. And it works. Like, I fully acknowledge it's brainless, it's not smart, but it's just fun. I look back on this with much more kind of rose-colored glasses. You know, it was fun at the time, and then as time went on, I'm like, okay, it was kind of brainless and dumb and stupid, but now I'm like, that's kind of fine. It's kind of okay. Every comic book created doesn't have to be Watchmen or The Dark Knight. It doesn't have to be a life-altering piece of work that changes your perception of existence. It can just be superheroes fighting each other. Again, there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it, but that's just subjective. That's my opinion. So, you know what? I enjoyed the hell out of these. Bunch of great art, bunch of fun. We all should be so lucky to be able to have the opportunity to cross over with your best friend's characters and have just a fun book of fighting. Good times. So that's all I've got for this one. As always, thank you so much for joining me. I really, really appreciate it, and I will see you on the next one.